You're in the middle of a conversation, and suddenly you're not. You're still there physically, still nodding in what you hope are the right places, but something has quietly exited. You're watching from a distance. The room feels slightly unreal. Your own voice, if you speak, sounds like it's coming from somewhere else. Or maybe it's the drive you can't remember, the hour that vanished, the argument you were present for but have no access to now, the way your body kept moving through a difficult moment while something essential in you had already left the building. This is dissociation, not a rare, dramatic, movie of the week condition, a common, often invisible, deeply human response to overwhelm, and one of the most misunderstood experiences in all of mental health. Today, we're setting the record straight. What dissociation actually is, why the brain does it, how trauma shapes it, and what helps. The dissociation cheat sheet is linked in the description. Let's go. Section 1. What dissociation actually is. 1G to 230. Dissociation is the disruption of the normally integrated functions of consciousness, memory, identity, emotion, perception, behavior, and sense of self. That is the clinical definition. Here is the human one. It is what the brain does when experience becomes more than the system can process while remaining fully present. The word dissociation literally means disconnection, and that is exactly what it is. A disconnection between aspects of experience that are usually woven together, between body and mind, between self and surroundings, between the present moment and one's continuous sense of identity across time. The integrated, coherent, fully here experience of being a self in a moment comes apart, partially or more completely. And the result is the range of experiences people describe as zoning out, spacing out, feeling unreal, feeling like they're watching themselves, or simply not being there. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, whose landmark work, particularly The Body Keeps the Score, has done more than perhaps any other single contribution to bring trauma neuroscience into accessible cultural conversation, frames dissociation not as a pathology, but as a survival response. The brain does not dissociate because something is wrong with it. The brain dissociates because it is doing its job, protecting the organism from an experience that cannot be fully processed and integrated while remaining present. This framing, dissociation as protection, not pathology, is the most important reframe in all of trauma-informed work. It shifts the question from what is wrong with this person to what happened to this person, and what did their remarkably adaptive brain do to survive it. Section 2. The dissociation spectrum, 234 Psalms. Dissociation is not a binary, present or absent, normal or disordered. It exists on a spectrum that runs from the entirely ordinary at one end to the clinically significant at the other. And understanding the spectrum is essential because it places pathological dissociation in its proper context, as a more extreme expression of a capacity that every human brain possesses. At the mild end of the spectrum are the everyday dissociative experiences that virtually everyone recognizes. Highway hypnosis, arriving at your destination with no memory of the journey. Absorption in a book or film so complete that the physical environment temporarily ceases to register. Daydreaming, the automatic pilot mode of performing a familiar task while the mind is entirely elsewhere. These are normal, functional, and often pleasant. They represent the brain's capacity to modulate its level of conscious engagement with the immediate environment, a feature, not a bug. Moving along the spectrum, we reach the dissociative experiences associated with acute stress and trauma, emotional numbing, the sense of unreality during or after a frightening event, the tunnel vision narrowing of awareness, the experience of time distorting, slowing dramatically or passing in a blur. These are the dissociative responses that accompany extreme stress and that serve an acute protective function, reducing the subjective intensity of an experience that would otherwise be overwhelming. At the clinical end of the spectrum, are the dissociative disorders: depersonalization, derealization disorder, dissociative amnesia, and dissociative identity disorder, each representing a more chronic, more pervasive, more functionally impairing expression of the same underlying dissociative capacity. These conditions are not categorically different from the milder expressions on the spectrum. They are what happens when the dissociative response, repeatedly activated in the context of severe and prolonged trauma, becomes the nervous system's default mode of operating. Section 3. Dissociation and Trauma. Van der Kolk's Framework, 4NAR 530. The relationship between dissociation and trauma is not incidental. It is architectural. Dissociation is one of the primary mechanisms by which the traumatized brain manages experiences that cannot be fully processed and integrated in the moment they occur. Van der Kolk's framework, grounded in decades of neurobiological research, is direct on this point. When a person experiences something overwhelming, abuse, violence, profound loss, chronic threat, the normal memory consolidation process that would allow the experience to be encoded as a narrative, assigned to the past, and integrated into the continuous story of the self is disrupted. The hippocampus, which is responsible for contextualizing experience in time and place, goes offline under extreme stress. What gets encoded instead are fragments, sensory impressions, body states, emotional charges, disconnected from the narrative context that would allow the brain to file them as over. These fragmented, unintegrated pieces of traumatic experience are what Van der Kolk means when he says the body keeps the score. They are not stored as memories in the ordinary sense. They are stored as states, bodily states, emotional states, perceptual states, that can be activated by triggers in the present environment without the person having any conscious awareness of the connection. A smell, a tone of voice, a particular quality of light, and suddenly the person is not fully in the present. Part of them has been pulled into a neural state that belongs to the past. Dissociation in this context is the nervous system's attempt to manage the activation of these unintegrated states without being overwhelmed by them. It is the brain saying, I cannot be fully here right now, because being fully here is too close to being back there. And it is protecting something real. The challenge of trauma treatment is not eliminating dissociation. It is building enough capacity, enough safety, enough nervous system regulation that the traumatic material can eventually be processed and integrated, reducing the need for dissociation as a management strategy. Section 4. Dissociation versus psychosis. The critical distinction, 533-630. One of the most clinically important distinctions in working with dissociation, and one of the most anxiety-provoking confusions for people experiencing it, is the difference between dissociation and psychosis. People experiencing depersonalization or derealization, the sense of being unreal, of watching oneself from outside, of the world looking flat or dreamlike, frequently fear that they are losing their mind. That what they are experiencing is a break from reality of the kind associated with psychosis. This fear is understandable, and it is, in the overwhelming majority of cases, incorrect. The distinguishing feature is reality testing. In dissociation, the person knows that something is off. They know that the world appearing flat and unreal is a perceptual distortion, not an accurate representation of reality. They experience the unreality while retaining the awareness that it is their perception that has shifted, not the world. This intact reality testing, the I know this feels strange but I know it isn't real, is the clearest clinical differentiator from psychosis, in which reality testing is impaired and the person cannot distinguish their distorted perceptions from reality. For therapists, when a client reports feeling unreal or like they're watching themselves, the clinical priority is to assess reality testing before anything else. The presence of intact reality testing with distressing perceptual symptoms is the signature of dissociation. and it calls for grounding and nervous system stabilization, not alarm. For clients, if you know that what you're experiencing feels strange, that awareness itself is important information. Dissociation is frightening. It is not the same as losing your mind. Section 5. Grounding and reconnection. 638. Because dissociation is a departure from full presence in the body and the present moment, the interventions that most directly address it work by re-establishing that connection, bringing the nervous system back into contact with the here and now through sensory, physical, and relational experience. Sensory grounding is the most immediate and most widely applicable tool. The 5 senses are the body's anchors to the present moment, and deliberately engaging them during a dissociative episode interrupts the nervous system's drift from the present. The 5-4-3-2-1 technique, naming 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, 1 you can taste, works because it directs attentional resources towards sensory input that is unambiguously present, current, and real. It is not magic. It is neuroscience. The sensory cortex and the dissociating neural circuits cannot fully co-activate, and engaging one interrupts the other. Physical contact with the body is equally powerful, and van der Kolk's body-first philosophy is directly relevant here. The body is where trauma lives, and the body is where healing happens. Grounding techniques that use physical sensation, pressing feet firmly into the floor, holding something cold or textured, splashing water on the face, the gentle pressure of a hand on the sternum, work by activating the body's proprioceptive and interoceptive systems, which are the systems that generate the felt sense of being in a body, in a place, in a moment. Relational grounding, the co-regulatory presence of a calm, attuned other person, is often the most powerful intervention of all, particularly for dissociation rooted in early relational trauma. Van der Kolk is explicit. The body comes back to the present most readily in the presence of a safe other. This is why the therapeutic relationship is not just the context for trauma work. It is one of the primary mechanisms of healing. The nervous system that learned to leave under threat can learn in the presence of consistent safety that staying is possible. The dissociation cheat sheet in the description covers the full spectrum, the types, the trauma connection, the warning signs, and a reference guide to grounding tools, all in one printable resource for personal use and clinical use. Outro 8-9 Kaun. Dissociation is not weakness. It is not drama. It is not a sign that you are broken or losing your grip on reality. It is the brain's most sophisticated emergency exit, deployed usually without your conscious permission, to protect you from an experience that was more than the system could fully absorb in the moment. And the fact that it worked, the fact that you got through whatever activated it, is worth acknowledging. The work of healing is not eliminating the capacity to dissociate. It is building enough safety, enough nervous system regulation, enough supported processing of what happened that the emergency exit gets used less, that staying present becomes more possible, that the body, which has been working so hard to protect you, can gradually learn that the threat has passed and that being here, fully, sensorially, relationally here, is safe. That is the direction. And it is reachable. The dissociation cheat sheet is in the description for your own understanding and for your clinical toolkit. Share this video with someone who has been calling their dissociation spaciness, laziness, or not paying attention, and didn't know there was another name for it. And I'll see you in the next one.